thank you so much for joining what is our fourth episode of our podcast, our GamingBuddy Gaming Podcast, where we talk everything gaming. So to preface this, to introduce you a little bit to our viewers, we're getting this on YouTube and on LinkedIn. Maybe would you mind introducing yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Vicente, for having me on. And, it's a bit later for you, but So as a preference, I'm located in the U.S. Early in the day for me when we're recording this. I'm not sure when whoever's listening to this is listening, but I'm been around in the gaming space for a little bit. My background comes specifically from influencers in the gaming space, so been an influencer myself in the mobile gaming space. Been creating content for quite a few years at this point, and then leverage that experience, just making content, having that content creation perspective, and reaching out to brands and things like that to work in influence and marketing. And that's where really my specialty has been for the past couple of years, been with PowerSpike, interned at a couple companies, Shell and right now with NVIDIA. So it's been an interesting time for me, and I think it's a lot of growth for the gaming space as well. Been lucky to just see everything that's going on in the gaming space, and especially with influencers, because I think gaming and esports in general are moving more towards influencers, and all different types of influencers too. So yeah, thanks for having me on, Vicente.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks so much for coming on. Mark, you have an absolutely awesome profile. The first time I saw you on LinkedIn, man, you had some type of content that I haven't really seen much on there. A lot of it's like very business, and that's like how you're the content you're producing, but it's very, it's very Mark, I feel, like this week in esports. I really love that you're providing a lot of great value to people, and on top of that, super simple video and your face. I mean, where did you come up with that idea of just...
Yeah, the origin story is actually kind of interesting because in all transparency, everyone, I'm still in university. And so I started this in 2019 when I had a management class. So it was one of my first business classes, I would say. And I was supposed to go interview a couple managers. And by a couple, they said 10. And I was like, 10's a lot of managers. And so I had to go, and I knew some managers in real life, but then I was like, well, where do I find professionals? And my first thought was LinkedIn. I wasn't really on LinkedIn at that point in 2019. It was more toward the latter half. So like October-ish, September-ish. And so I got more on the LinkedIn, and then I started reaching out to brands that I was familiar with in the gaming and esports space. So very early on for me, it was like HyperX and SteelSeries, like a lot of these peripheral brands, right? Razer, Logitech. That's where I was really familiar. And so I was reaching out, stumbled across, and by stumble across, I mean, he was lucky enough or open enough to chat with me, Philip Rasmussen. And, was having a chat with him originally for my class, but then he was also giving me some advice because, I'd wanted to work in the gaming space for a bit at this point. And he was telling me, hey, have you thought of potentially making content on LinkedIn? Because it's a pretty new space. Not as many people are in it. It's not saturated very much. And you could be kind of a first mover in there. And I had heard of first mover's advantage in one of my classes. So I was like, yeah, it seems like a good idea. I'm studying business. Why not create business content for business people? And so This Week in Esports originally started off as a weekly recap of more so actual esports content, so scores about esports. So I remember the first few ones, it was like Cloud9 beat G2 in this match, right? And it was very much so like an ESPN type thing.
Yeah.
But I realized, hey, this is, I think not only did my interest change, but my audience also wanted to see different types of things. So I kind of grew it out eventually and created different sections, and was able to basically innovate it over time so that I could make it something cohesive to what it is today. And I've been doing it for about 1.5 years now, which feels like forever at this point.
1.5 years, man. That's a long time.
Yeah, I've missed a couple weeks. I try not to miss as many, but I mean, it takes a while. It's a one-man production, so it's all just me. And
no, that's crazy, bro. That is absolutely awesome. Congratulations for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm not the best at doing all the analytics and everything, but I think it's been a pretty good success, and I've been able to add value to other people. And that's really, for me, I think initially it was a way to build a brand for myself, but also add value to others. And at this point, I think it's more so adding value to others, because people are like, I see you on there. I'm like, great. I just continue to do it, and people continue to get their weekly dose of business news and in the gaming and esports scene without having to do much, right? It's like,
I mean, I feel like I saw the transition from just esports of like teams doing this and this to M&As, investments in different esports and gaming and tech and new startups here and there. I think that's absolutely awesome, and I could like, now that you do mention it, I do see like the whole evolution of it. I think that's freaking awesome. But not only that, this is a one-man production, but you're telling me right now that you're still in university, right? I mean, I just graduated last year, and you're still in university, and on top of that you have your YouTube channel with 122,000 subscribers now,
something like that.
Something like that. I mean, that is absolutely awesome. I see your YouTube plaque in the back there, and on top of that, you started a new personal YouTube channel with a couple thousand subscribers now as well.
So I can talk a little bit more about that. So it is interesting. I've always been trying to find a way to segment both, because I have my personal brand online called Coolmark, and that's from me playing video games, specifically mobile games, and that's more so a very young demographic who's watching it, who wants to just get better at gaming or be entertained. And I've recently started to figure out like how can I maybe meld what I like in the business side and the marketing side, but also push that within younger folks, maybe teach them and educate them. And it's tough because I'm young as well, and I think having that interesting perspective gives an advantage, but also makes it so that maybe young people don't really want to learn about business, right? So I think it's an interesting kind of thought there. My YouTube channel is really focused on this one game called Critical Ops at the moment, at least. It's the game that I've been playing for quite a while at this point. I recently looked, and the first video I made on Critical Ops was in 2015. So it's been 6 years, which is a long time. And just that game specifically has built my channel a lot, and getting pretty deep into that community with esports commentary. So doing a lot of commentary around various tournaments and helping the devs promote that. But my second channel is mainly, trying to be more focused on just me as a person. So if I play other games, if I'm interested in other things, if I just want to tell stories, right? I think that's kind of the way, working with influencers every day, I see what works for them. And oftentimes it's, you have to be kind of risk taking. You have to put yourself out there and be more, I wouldn't say vulnerable, but open, right? I think the days of just streaming video games only for 8 hours a day, it's not really going to get you very far, at least if that's what you want to go. And so I think scaling out, you kind of have to do very interactive things. And, gaming alone is not necessarily the most interactive. So how do we spice it up? It's, finding ways to get your audience involved. So that's what I've found works pretty well. And
when did you start Coolmark? How long ago since?
So my first video went up in 2013 on that channel in June. And so, I was like 12. I probably broke term of service. I was probably too young for YouTube at that point. But I made it through. I'm here now. And I think I definitely I try not to delete a lot of my videos. I know a lot of people want to put, a ton of effort, and if it's not the best thing, they'll just, take it down. I'm definitely not that way. I kind of leave it up and kind of sometimes just revisit and be like, wow, that was a terrible video. I think I've come pretty far at this point, That's kind of like a reflection, and I don't think it's necessarily bad to make it public, at least in my perspective. Some people prefer different things, but I think for me, a lot of it's been just consistency. So, continually uploading, even if it's not the best. I think sometimes just putting something out there, from a marketing perspective, it helps, right? Just keeps your name in the bag.
Yeah, exactly. But it's really, it's not as easy as it sounds to keep it.
No. Well, it's I think I've picked a category of content that for me is pretty easy, and I thought it was pretty easy for everyone, which is just live commentary. But I realized your gameplay suffers a lot for live commentary. You're not very good because you're focused on being entertaining and playing the game at the same time. Most pros, if you think about in esports, they don't talk unless it's for competitive communication. They're like, one's over here, 3 people are over here, we got to defend. I'm just like saying various random phrases to make people laugh. Therefore my performance is pretty abysmal in any game I play. But I think it allows me to just be more open, and I don't have to plan everything out. And it's more so like I have an idea of how the video is going to go. So yeah, it's kind of,
So
it works for me.
you're telling me that young, 12-year-old little cool Mark was thinking, this is an absolutely awesome platform. Let me upload some gaming videos and just take it from there. That's what happened. That's how it started.
So actually, it was there's two creators at the time that I was following. They were called NextCPL and BNates Gamer. BNates Gamer is actually he's still a content creator in the mobile gaming space. I think Nexi has since stopped, but I was watching them a lot in early days, I think 2010, 2011, and they were making live commentaries too. And I was like, I think my sole thought was, I want to do that. And so I just started. I tried. My biggest barrier was finding a way to record my screen as a 12-year-old, 11-year-old
Yeah.
before, who didn't have a computer, who just had an iPod Touch 5, I believe.
No way.
iPod Touch 5 only came out in 2012. So like around that time, I was like, there was no Elgato thing for me. I didn't have a PC or anything. So I was trying to find ways to, screen record and record my microphone at the same time. Super tough. And so, kind of just had to peel together and find a way.
Damn, man, that's awesome. And now you've grown it to, what it is today's, right? So
Yeah.
What you say you work with influencers. You consider yourself an influencer as well, but you're still working. You're still in university. On top of that, you're progressing through your corporate life as well, through the internships. But what would you consider your profession? What are you doing now? Like, what would you say that you're doing?
Yeah, I would say I'm working in the tech and the gaming industry, particularly focused just on influencers, right? So influencer marketing, influencer strategy within various verticals, and so that's kind of my bread and butter, which is having to know the space. I think is one thing. That's just intimate knowledge of the industry, whether it be gaming or tech, AI and data science, things like that, and then executing upon actual campaigns and asks, right? So a lot of my job is finding the right influencer for this person by various metrics, and then kind of reaching out to them, negotiating, getting everything set up, and then executing on the campaign. So providing them with everything they need. And it's been I think we've refined the process, and I've certainly learned a lot from it. But over the past couple of years doing it, I think it's a science and an art in itself. I think there's a lot of things that are becoming very data driven, and I think that's still the case. But also, you don't know a streamer until you've watched their bits, right?
Exactly, right.
You have to know, this streamer really likes to say these stupid things, but that goes really well with this brand because this brand has this identity, right? And they kind of care less about being more brand safe versus this brand cares more. And this streamer, maybe, another streamer is better suited for this. So, just knowing the qualitative attributes of streamers, sometimes, it's tough to grasp all of it, but, that's part of the job. So that's basically what I do on a day-to-day basis.
On a day-to-day basis, alongside actually maintaining your social media channels and creating a bunch of content.
So yeah, sometimes they take a hit. Obviously, gotta prioritize various things, but I try and do both as much as I can. And I think the pandemic has really helped that, right?
Yeah.
We can't really go outside to do much. And I think like This Week in Esports also was spurred by the pandemic to kind of push it more and innovate it, because with all the digital content, it's like, what else are you going to consume? You can't leave your house. The only outlets like Twitch or Netflix or Hulu, right. or YouTube, right? So I was like, well, I can't create stuff on Netflix and Hulu's, but I can create stuff on YouTube and Twitch. So that's kind of where I went, and I think it's been helpful. We'll see how it kind of goes once the pandemic proceeds a little bit, but we'll see. So
I think I'm super curious about this. You're one of the busiest people I've talked to so far. By the sounds of it, you have so many things to do. So tell me, what is a day in the life of Mark?
That's a question sometimes I can't even answer. I think that the first thing is just look at the calendar. What do I got going on? Usually the night before, I literally just, I check my calendar to see how early do I have to wake up, right? Because sometimes I have calls at meetings at 7:30, which those are, sometimes unideal, but, we live, and it kind of just adjusts my day. So I always go for a run in the morning, or I try and go for runs in the morning, anywhere from like 2 to 10 miles. So whatever I'm feeling that day will just, get off to a good start. And then it's, to the races. So off to a lot of meetings and at the current moment, interning with NVIDIA, it's really busy. It's a lot of launch seasons. So a lot of products, a lot of announcements. And so, just getting ramped up, making sure everything's aligned and that we have all the pieces of the puzzle ready. But that's kind of the day for me right now, is just in a lot of meetings, sending a lot of emails, updating sheets a lot, creating docs and templates. And, that's the crux of my job. And then, basically doing that from 9 to 5, or, sometimes 8 to 6, depending on how late we got to work. And then, get off, get some food, maybe stream a bit, or if I'm not feeling it, because sometimes work takes it out of you. I don't have the motivation every day or energy every day to be like, I want to go and be, a character online. It's like, if I go live, this is not going to be fun for the community. So I'm just not going to go. I'll go when I'm more ready. But yeah, that's kind of my day. And it's been the same like that most of this summer. It'll probably change, once classes start for me, but.
Wait, okay. So what are you studying now? Now we're getting back to the university stuff. What are you studying?
Yeah, so I'm studying marketing and computer information systems, rising senior. So I got one more year, which is
nice.
Pretty good. At least I get to experience 1 year in person again. But yeah, I think it works well with what I'm doing at NVIDIA. I don't necessarily do any coding, which is the computer information systems or CIS part of my degree, but it helps me understand some of the technical things that we talk about, and then the marketing obviously helps more so with understanding how this can impact business and whatnot.
All right. So Mark, one more interesting thing I really wanted to get into before we get further in. A step back. How did you get into gaming? Like, when did you find out you were interested in this?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the question. I was always. I think it's a thing of, if your parents tell you no, you want to do it more. I think that every kid has that rebellious kind of side to them. And so my parents were like, this is bad for you. And I was like, I don't know if it was because of that or because I'd found games fun in the beginning, but I think that definitely fueled it. So really young age, I am not going to age myself because I'm not old. I think I started playing games. Like, my first game I remember playing was Mario versus Donkey Kong on the Game Boy. And so that's a that kind of shows how youthful I am. I know people be like, I was playing GoldenEye. I was like, I did not play GoldenEye. I'm young. I'll be honest. I am Gen Z, so I don't know about the OG games that a lot of people talk about. But that was my first game I remember playing, at least. And the most annoying thing about that game was, I think we had a bugged Game Boy, because every time we would insert the cartridge and then turn off the Game Boy, it would delete all our progress.
No.
And so I got really good at levels like 1 through 4, because then the battery would die at level 4 and it would just reset every time. So I was like, I can speed run levels 1 through 4 like no other person here. But after level 4, I was like, I have no clue what's beyond level 4. So it was a bad Game Boy. But we never really got consoles, so that's kind of how I got stuck with mobile. And I still never owned a console. I've never owned an Xbox or a PlayStation, which is surprising to a lot of people. I have a controller now. I have a PlayStation controller, but I've never owned a console, and console controls are very weird to me. I hold the controller, I'm like, this is so weird putting my hands on joysticks and stuff. I'm like,
what are you using it on? What are you using it for?
I'm either PC or mobile. So I'm either full on, I got my beast of a rig, or I'm just playing on my, phone or iPad. Console's never really been a part of my my gaming experience. And, maybe one day I will have it, but lesser known fact is I don't really play console, just because it's like, I think my thought was, why get a device that can only act as like an entertainment tool? I'd rather get a device that I can use for work, school, and gaming all in one, and entertainment. Like with a PC, yes, maybe it costs more, but one, it's going to last longer, and two, you can use it for a lot more things. You don't have to go to class on your Xbox. You can go to class on your PC. So I was like, I'm just going to get a more multifunctional piece of hardware, and I think that's kind of where I landed. But nothing wrong with the consoles. I just never got into them.
No, I mean, I feel like the only reason we got into console was like, I got gifted a console when PlayStation 1 came out way back when by my grandmother, and she was in the States, living in the States back then, and she sent it over. We lived in the Philippines. I'm from the Philippines. And at that time I was like 5 years old, 6 years old, maybe a little bit less. And then my parents, they were so addicted to the PlayStation 1 that I wasn't allowed to play it.
Wow.
They were actually the ones putting me to bed earlier so that they
Wow.
could keep playing. They were playing like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, like the first ones, right? And
Wow.
as I grew a bit older, I feel like we all had each of our role in the family. I'm an only child, so my mom would be telling my dad what to do in each of like the scenarios in Silent Hill, Resident Evil, like, and I would be reading off of a manual, like a printed off manual that we'd find online
Oh
of
my
like a
gosh.
walkthrough, you know. So I feel like that's the reason why consoles has kind of like been like stuck with me. But I kind of drifted away from it after PlayStation 3 because then I invested in my own piece of hardware for some reason because I thought it was really cool to be able to build your own piece of hardware and start gaming, you know. And then
Yeah.
and then suddenly like multiplayer games, online games became huge. I graduated high school back in 2014 in Indonesia, and I've been moving around a lot. And again, as an only child, it was really hard for me to like keep, you know, friendships, right? And I ended up doing that through League of Legends gaming. Like I still play with League of Legends like 5 years later now with people that I haven't seen since then, but we're still really close. I mean, I think that's absolutely freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Now that's one of my favorite things about gaming. But on the flip side, something that I've experienced a lot is that one thing, you have a lot of really good moments with your friends and even random people, right? But you can also experience some really, really horrible things online. Is that I mean, that's actually something I'd like to get your input on. Now you have a little bit more of a a POV from the business side, influencers, esports as well. How is toxicity treated from that perspective? Is that something that's an issue there as well, or?
Yeah, so I think interestingly enough, from an influencer perspective, I mean, we saw in 2020 there was the whole Me Too movement, right? That was, I think, reading a lot of very toxic, very bad behaviors from the gaming space. Whether you were a player, a commentator, analyst, whatever you were, influencer, and so I think toxicity at an influencer level, especially, is not tolerated at all. I think brands go to extreme lengths, and I know in my job, I go to make sure that, hey, if this brand has very specifically requested, we want to make sure we have a clean person, no reputation of mishaps in the past, that we have to do that. So it is very apparent, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons why brands don't get into gaming, is because they see it's super young and you can capture a young demographic, but there's a lot of toxicity amongst young people. And I don't think that's just because of gaming, but I think just young people in general, right? Where a lot of young people congregate, there's going to be toxicity. And so I think the most commonplace right now is with gaming, because it's so easily accessible. With influencers, I mean, they're by nature influencers. So if they're toxic, their community might also be toxic, or they might be negatively impacting their community, right? And some influencers, they do it, their goal as an influencer is not to be a light of positivity. Their light's to be entertainment. So if they have to put themselves down or someone else down for content, that's their choice. But some other influencers really want to be positive. And so we kind of just have to manage that. Some brands even want those people who are a little more negative and a little more, packing a punch when they go into stream. But, we just have to understand where it kind of lines. And I mean, overall for the gaming experience, when someone's toxic, it's just not good. I remember, me as a player, this was when Valorant first came out in, 2020, I believe, or, way back when. And I was playing the beta with my friend, and we just got into a game, and like there was just one person. This was our first experience with Valorant.
Yeah.
One person just cursing us out the entire time. Anything you said, you was like, oh, there's someone over towards A long. They would just curse you out, and it was just a terrible experience. Like, you couldn't communicate with this person because they weren't just spamming it. They were actively waiting for you to say something and then just become toxic. And so, I was like, this is a terrible experience, but it's not really the point of the game. But I understand that because it's not part of the game. If someone's brand new to the game, as a dev, that really is terrible, because they probably will never play the game again, right? Your player drop off will be huge if your game is very toxic, because it's a huge barrier to entry. So game devs have a huge incentive to push for non-toxic communities or tools that prevent toxicity, right? Like muting, like reporting for griefing, things like that. So I think it's an ever growing battle in the gaming space. As it grows bigger, there's also more room for toxicity, right? There's more people who are going to be toxic. So how do we combat that and make it so that there is not more room for toxicity, so that it kind of pushes out. And maybe if they want to be toxic, put all of them in the same place, right? Don't put them with the people who want to be nice. Right? And I think there's lots of solutions being thought of, but it's always an issue. So
I mean, at least I'm very happy to hear that. I mean, I kind of knew that already. Like a lot of brands, obviously, they don't want to be branded with other communities that are toxic as well. But yes, some brands do want to be in that light. Fair enough. That's their brand, right? Right? But I mean, we do see some steps being taken towards this because toxicity, in my opinion, there's a lot of forms of toxicity. There's verbal hostility, there's online harassment, there's in-game griefing. There's so many different ways of doing it that it's so difficult to kind of keep track of all of it, especially in such a huge online game. Like just using League of Legends or Valorant as an example, right? And it's just so difficult. Everyone's anonymous, everyone has the chat function, everyone can talk. Like what's stopping them? I mean, at least Valorant's taken a step forward, introducing some kind of moderation function for voice comms, right? But I mean, that's the right step, but I mean, it's far from, in my opinion at least, going to do something very big. I mean, right. It's a pity though, right?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, it's the same thing with, you can make the best game, but you can't necessarily control the community. You can push them to a certain space as the publisher, the game dev, but at the end of the day, if people are just super toxic in your game, it's not like, I don't think game devs come out with the intention of making their game.
No, absolutely not.
Community be toxic. So it's always a tough problem to solve. And, I think oftentimes people just leave those communities. People are like, this game is super toxic, I want to find a different game, right? You don't find the same level of toxicity in Animal Crossing as you do in League of Legends.
It depends on the game, obviously.
Yeah. So it's like, people kind of either, I mean, from a game dev perspective, I've never been a game dev, so I can't really speak, but I see what they're always trying to do and the features they're releasing to combat it. And I think, they've done well with verbal things and chat. If someone's harassing you there, you can mute them. But if they're griefing you in game, there's no way to stop that. I play CS:GO a lot, and sometimes people will just they'll block you. Like you can't pass this way. And the only way you can either move past that way or get to where you want is you have to take the other person down, and that makes you look bad, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so how do you solve the issue without hurting and harming yourself? And that's a tough one because it's so much of a case by case situation. If you report it and someone's reviewing it, they're like, what was the context here? And so there's no easy way to mass scale the reduction of toxicity, I don't think, but tons of companies are working on it, right?
I mean, you saw Void Boy a couple years ago, right? From League of Legends, made this huge he made a video talking about toxicity in League of Legends. I don't know if you saw it, but I mean, all of the biggest YouTubers in League of Legends, highest ranking players in solo queue had just kind of pushed it out with him, supporting him in this, telling Riot, hey, something's got to happen because it's affecting their community. It's affecting the influencers, creating the best community for the game. So, I mean, as much as I love League of Legends, it's really killing it. So, I mean, at least I'm really happy to see that steps are being taken in the right direction. And yes, it's not easy, but I feel like, a certain aspect of, matchmaking and just like you said, maybe putting the toxic people together, they might have a little bit more fun together because they're a little bit more, like that. And people, it's never easy.
I mean, I think, toxicity can also just come from like cheating. Right, like people who cheat in games. Like I saw this interesting thing. Apex Legends was recently hacked by people who were tired of cheaters. I think they put up a pop-up display and it said savetitanfall.com, and it leads you to a website that's like, here's what's going on in Titanfall. We want Respawn, EA, we want you to please save the game. Like we love the game, but it's unplayable. Like if you download it, you'll basically crash, or if you get in a game, it's going to be all cheaters. And so like they've had to do extreme measures where they literally they have to do bad to get good. They have to put a message in the game to get Riot or Respawn or EA or Respawn's attention so that they can fix another game, right?
But wait. What's so? I mean, I haven't heard that. I think that's cool. It's kind of like the uprising against all of the evil that's been going on. I feel like I heard that in a movie somewhere. But like, isn't it crazy that you have to go to this far of an extent to get the attention of the bigger game developers, the people making these large AAA titles?
Yeah, I think the game devs have a lot to consider when it comes to making these decisions, right? Is the game base huge, right? Is it a large game base where it's worth actually putting game dev hours into fixing that game, or is it kind of just a game on the back burner and it's been out for a while and the player base isn't growing? Because I think that also plays into it. From a business standpoint, game studios have to make money, so they're gonna put the resources where they have the most players, and if the game doesn't have the most players, they're not gonna try and fix it as much. So I think that's a tough piece, and some games have a really devout community, but it's small, and that's why it's so devout, right? And so I don't think necessarily that the largest titles, it's difficult for larger titles to have a really strong community. More of these smaller titles have a really strong one, and when they're neglected, it feels bad, but sometimes you have to go to those lengths.
I mean, there's nothing to do about it. I mean, there just isn't. And the stories you've told here, like, you sound very resilient to the toxicity that you've kind of experienced. What do you do to kind of get through it? I mean,
so I think it depends on my mood. In all transparency, some days I'm in an okay mood and I can handle it. Some days I'm not. Some days I'm just like, I don't want to hear it, I'm gonna ban you. I think at least from a Twitch standpoint, they give you really good tools to just stop it. If someone's being super toxic, you can just be like, I don't want you in my chat. You are here as my guest. I don't have to at all listen to what you say. You are watching me, and you don't control what I do. So I'm, if you're telling me to do something or saying bad things, you can just ban them, right? And I think that's one of the best and sometimes even most satisfying things to do as a streamer. Just put down the ban hammer and like, that chatter is just being so toxic, like get him out of here. But there's sometimes where I will sometimes draw on it. They're like, Mark, you suck so much at this video game, and I'm like, yep, and that's why you're watching me. So sometimes sometimes you poke fun at it as well. I think if you're in the right mood, but some days you get off and it's a long day and you're like, I just want to play games. Like, I don't want you to tell me I'm bad. And I think a lot of streamers do. I think the best streamers and influencers embrace it. They actually take the toxicity and they take it to a whole new level. Like some streamers, maybe they have a bit or two about them. Like I think Tim the Tap Man, he's like, I'm fat. Like, and people call him fat all the time, right? And he has embraced it, and he will call himself fat. He's like, I'm just fat. Like, at this point, I don't care, And so I think, if you can embrace it, I think that's the true level of just like, that builds my brand. Like, people know me for being bad at the game. Why don't I dig into that? Because people already know me for that and grow that. And so I think that, obviously, hopefully that message isn't terrible.
No,
but
I do have a question to that. Now, just 2 days ago, I had a call, the last podcast episode with Miranda O'Hare, voice actor of Skye in Valorant, actually. And she's relatively new in gaming as well. So she had a really, really cool POV of especially esports, females in gaming, right? And one of the things we actually talked about was very similar to what you just mentioned here. A lot of people like, give that 1 second. A lot of the people that were in, Twitch streamers, influencers, they've accepted the toxicity. But I mean, on the flip side, isn't that a kind of normalizing it? Like, they're toxic to you. Your community's a little okay with it. Therefore, they can go somewhere else and start being toxic, that kind of thing. What do you think about that?
I think it's a very good point you bring up and an interesting one. I think you also have to think about what impact you're not going to stop toxicity throughout all of gaming, and you're not going to stop toxicity for even just one person potentially. The best you can do is make sure that it's not necessarily a thing in your channel, or if it is, make sure it's controlled, right? In regulation or however you want to view it. There are toxic streamers who just, they are toxic. Their stream, their audience is toxic, and they kind of are just like a moving mound of angry bees. It seems, it's like a floating raft of bees that you don't want to go near.
Yeah.
And I think other streamers avoid them, but there's sometimes where being, I think if it's not, I think being toxic and joking are two separate things, and people sometimes get those mixed up where it's, a joke can sometimes be toxic, a joke can sometimes be funny. And it can just be like a small jab, right? So I think just different streamers have different goals, right? Like some streamers, like you can read the chat rules. Some are like, yeah, you can curse and like make jokes about me. If I don't like your joke, I'm going to ban you. It's like you run the risk of, it's a give and a get. Some streamers are like, I don't want any negativity here. And so, I think it's also, freedom to do what you want with your stream. You can't necessarily control if one streamer is really bad. You can just disassociate with them, right? And so I think most streamers are moving towards the let's not be toxic, or if it's considered somewhat toxic, let's make it kind of a joke and not like actually do this. But I think toxic is different from joking, right? Yeah. So I think a lot of streamers have embraced jokes, and I think toxicity is something that maybe hurts other people. A lot of streamers joke about themselves, and I think that's fine. And they're like, look at me, I'm stupid, I'm bad at this game. And it's like, I think the audience finds that funny. They're not negatively impacting anyone else. And as long as they're okay and they embrace that joke, then it's like, I think that's kind of fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good way of seeing it, because like, I mean, I do agree with what you're saying, especially because I feel like toxicity to an extent is, subjective. I feel like sometimes some things that some of my friends feel is a little toxic, I actually find funny. Like some type of, self-deprecating humor, I'm totally cool with, because I'm fine with that. And some people find it funny, some don't. And I think when you kind of start to filter out the community members that don't like that kind of stuff, they go away, watch some other people, and then you start bringing in the people that are part of the humor in your community, and then you build a really, really strong community. So I do completely follow where you're getting at. So super, super interesting POV. So just to kind of take another step back, in super interesting point with you growing your YouTube channel, by the way, when did you know that this was something to pursue? YouTube.
I don't think I ever thought of it as something to pursue, actually. I've always thought of it as something like a side thing. And I think in the early days, ignorance was bliss. I kind of took that mindset where I was like, maybe I'm not growing very much, but like, it's still pretty fun. Like I like uploading, and I like the thrill of like clicking publish and like one or two comments coming in, right? I think that was the big thing. And having some interaction and being able to, make other people happy. I think most people will maybe point to like a specific number or an achievement. I had my goal set on 100K, and once I hit that, I was like, I don't really need to set any other goals, and I haven't. I think a lot of people, are like, I want to go on to the next better thing, and I'm like, there's some things in life where I don't necessarily want to keep up leveling, because then it feels like it's a job. Then I feel like I don't necessarily want to continue it. I mean, but you can also take the perspective of it's a game. I want to get to the next level, continue, and then complete the game, right? So it's, but I don't think it ever ends with YouTube. There's no end level, right?
No,
or content creation or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, I just always liked it. I think for me, just if if the games I'm playing are fun and I can add value to some other people and make them laugh or entertain them, that's what's really helpful. And it's interesting because the game I play, a lot of people are not American. So there's a pretty big European base, pretty big Asian base as well, and South America. I think the US might actually, or North America might actually be one of the smallest bases, even though I'm there. I'm from the US, right? And so I've gotten comments before that where you've helped me learn English. And I was like, well, awesome, I've never thought of that. I was like, I never thought that I would help someone learn, because they were like, yeah, I don't hear these words. And like, because, maybe someone's in a country in Europe and they don't really hear the words I say in their classroom. Like maybe they learn English, but they don't hear it in the context I use them. And they're like, you've actually, or like, maybe someone from India is trying to learn it and they haven't really heard these words.
Yeah,
and
but
so
that's awesome.
I just say my things. I just am my dumb self, and people can learn from that, and they can, maybe learn how to pronounce things in a different way or the meaning of various things. So sometimes I've also been like, it's interesting to me that some people don't know certain things, and I'm like, I just have to sometimes be aware that they're not, they just might not be aware. It's not like they're trying to troll me or something. It's like they just truly don't know. I remember asking them, I was like, do you guys remember like XYZ song? And they're like, what is that? Or like, have you ever played like Halo? And my chat's like, no. And I was like, wow. So I'm like that, that kind of shows the youth that I'm catering to. It's like, it's a whole different generation of gaming, right? People who grew up on consoles and stuff. Like a lot of the folks in my chat they've never had even a PC. It's all mobile, and that's what I'm realizing with mobile is it reaches the masses for a reason, because it's so accessible, right?
Absolutely. All right, so for I know there's a lot of people in the community, in the GamingBuddy community that we've talked to. We have a lot of really, really young gamers as well. How that are super interested in this, by the way, in your career, YouTube, influencers, gaming. What would you say to them, for the people who are motivated to go into your line of work, specifically content creation? What would be your advice?
Yeah, content creation. I think, there's a lot of overstated things, but it's just try. I think you, or actually have a goal. Set your goal before you start, because I think that's a really, just a good mindset to have, is make sure you have at least one, and then, set parameters for it. I remember I was watching streamer Ludwig, and he's like, how to become a good streamer. And he's like, set yourself a goal. Yeah. And I think, it's a great one. I think it's good for content creation too, which is like, who do you want to emulate, right? Because obviously most people were motivated by someone else. They're not just going to be, they haven't watched any YouTube and then they want to be a YouTuber, right? That's usually not the process of being motivated. And so it's like, what style do you want to emulate? What type of content do you want to create? And set yourself a benchmark. Like, I want to hit this by this amount or by this date. And if you don't hit it, then you are done. You stop, right? And if you hit it, you can keep going. And I think that's a really good way of, kind of pushing yourself. And so, I think it's just mapping out a plan as well. And this one for me is also a very different perspective. So I've heard the perspective of every video you make is someone's first impression of your channel, which is true. That is true. Someone who's going to see it for the first time, and they're gonna be like, this is my first time ever seeing this video. Do I want to sub to this channel? Do I want to come back? Right. And some people just say, make content. You're going to make bad content. You're going to make good content. Just go out and make it, because people who make it more understand how to make it better. Right. And so you kind of have to understand, which one am I going to take? Am I going to be very precise with my craft and really hone in on every video, make it a perfect masterpiece? Or am I just gonna experiment different things? This video might not do better, but this one might do. And I'd rather try and be scrappy versus try and perfect it. So I think that's also perspective to take of what type of cadence you want to make. And I think naturally that comes with what style of video you make, right? So if you're making huge 3D renderings of mini films and video games, that's gonna take a long time, and you're gonna obviously need a lot of time, a lot of creative prowess, and then good hardware, because it's hard to render all of that, versus if you're just doing fun little bits or live streams, or things that maybe take less resources, you can kind of go a different route. So I would say just have a goal and kind of determine what type of creator you want to be, and then stick to that. If eventually you find yourself not wanting to do that, you can change. It's not like you're bound to one thing. I find myself wanting to change my content too, which is why, I created a second channel, and I want to brand myself less so towards one game specifically, and more so just as a personality. Right. So I think that's, people change over time, and some for the better, some for the worse, as far as like for their social presence. But
and you say people start in this industry usually, or like in this line of work usually, because they've been motivated by some people, right? They're inspired. So you mentioned a couple of content creators in the beginning that you were watching, but who inspired you to do what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think I can't assume for everyone that they get inspired by content creators, but that's how I was. And I think it shifts early as you kind of go through different phases of your life, right? So early on, I was watching a lot of mobile trick shot editors, the core essence of gaming back when, kind of what you think of FaZe Clan in 2010, 2011, right? Just trick shots, edits, cool music, dubstep.
Well, when
I was
Call of
watching all
Duty
those.
Modern Warfare 2 was that, right?
Right. And, I think that's what I was motivated by. And then I kind of got in a different phase where I was seeing entertainment based streamers where they were just funny. They would play with the same group of friends, and they record them and they do dumb things and say funny things, and that was entertaining, right? And then moving on to other types of creators who it seemed like they made a well polished video about a subject. It's like, this was very well researched. This is kind of like an academic piece almost, and I can learn from that. And so I think just for me, I just went wherever my interests went. So some parts of my life early on, I thought, trick shotting was cool. And then I figured out that, I liked personality based things, and then, educational stuff. And I think right now, at least for me, I'm honing in on personality based content creators. So creators that I would watch them do anything. They don't have to be playing games. They can literally be talking, and they could be eating food. They could be, going for a walk, and I would still watch them because they're entertaining, right? I think that's kind of what recently, at least what I've been wanting to, what I've been attracted towards, at least been watching, and then also what I've been trying to kind of push in my content. So yeah, that's cool. Kind of what I've been.
So one last thing here, because I know one of the most difficult things in this, the content creation, influencing in YouTube is, taking the first step. So how would you what would you say to the people like, afraid of taking that first leap of faith? Like posting your first video, filming your first edit. I mean, I had that in the beginning as well, where I had several videos where I'd never posted anything just because I was my own worst critic, right? A lot of people feel that way. What would you say to them?
Tell someone else your goal. So tell someone else you're going to do it. Your friend, your parents, your relatives, your siblings, whoever. Tell someone, I'm going to upload a video in X amount of time. And then it's on their mind. They're like, oh, cool. I'll look forward to it. And when you don't do it by that time, they're going to be like, wait, you didn't upload. Because I think for a lot of people, they don't do, if you don't have self-motivation, right? Maybe you do have self-motivation, but you're a little scared or timid. So if that's the case, make someone else also a part of it, because then they're going to push you to do it, right? Not, if you, I think it's the same thing with working out and motivation, right? Yeah, if you only tell yourself you're going to work out, you have no one else to hold accountable for. But if you said, I'm going to work out with my friend at 6 a.m. and they show up and you don't, now you feel bad for not showing up. So you're going to show up. So making sure someone else is also somewhat accountable in your process. And so they can kind of hold you accountable and also say, hey, I'm looking forward to your video. Did you make it yet? And you're like, dang, I gotta actually make that video. So yeah, I think that's one way to keep yourself accountable, if that's at least what you're having trouble with.
Yeah,
so
I mean, that's cool, man. All right, Mark, we're slowly running out of time here. We had a lot of really good input, super cool input from your side. I think that's super awesome on also your kind of evolution through gaming, influencing. What are the next steps for you? What are you going to continue with? Are you going to continue with the cool Mark? Are you going to focus a little bit more on your personal content or the LinkedIn evolution? How's that?
Yeah, I think just honing in on being the best I can at my craft, right? So I'm currently in influencer stuff, so expanding my reach within influencer marketing, getting better techniques, working with cool brands and creators to make cool activations happen. I think that's what I am looking forward to. And then, with my own personal content, just evolving it and trying to challenge myself. I mean, there's been literal days where I have had the whole game plan out and I'm just not motivated to record. I just don't want to get behind the mic or the camera and just, say everything that I should say. And so, I think just creating the content that I want to be creating and putting myself down the path I want to be putting myself down, which is more of that kind of personality driven content. But I think the LinkedIn stuff is here to stay. I really like posting business stuff on LinkedIn, and I think I have a passion for marketing and sponsorships and things like that. So I always try and I cover those pretty heavily, and but just overall business stuff as well is interesting to me. So keeping up the LinkedIn, keeping up the content, maybe waning a little bit as I finish up my final year in university, but as it stands, we'll just continue to go and maybe take a break here or two. here and there.
I mean,
but
you're
we'll see.
putting in a lot of work and sweat into this. I could tell it's going great, and honestly I'm just looking forward to see what's to come, because I'm proud to say that I've been stalking you a lot. A lot of your content here there.
I'll take it as a compliment, and I appreciate you for having me on, and the GamingBuddy team for helping with this as well, and your ventures as well.
Absolutely. Can you, just to finish it all off, maybe plug your socials? Where can the viewers find you?
Just look me up on LinkedIn. That's all you need. I won't necessarily plug anyone else, because I think this is probably most relevant on LinkedIn, right? So Mark Kai, MarkCai, if you want to reach out to me. I'm not a hard person to reach out to. I'm
absolutely
very
not. He's
open.
an absolutely great open person.
So I'm not like, you need to email me. It's like, if you figured out my Twitter or YouTube or whatever, there's so many ways to reach out. So
that's perfect.
Figure out what's most convenient for you, and then I can
what a flexible guy.
fair there. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, you know what? Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your inputs. Absolutely great to have you. No doubt it's going to bring a lot of value to anybody that's super interested in this field. And love to have you on another time as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Vicente. And thanks everyone listening.